So the final item of business today is a members' business debate on motion number 9204 in the name of Margaret Mitchell on celebrating Commonwealth Week. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put, and I would invite those members who wish to speak in the debate to press the request to speak buttons now or as soon as possible, please. I now call on Margaret Mitchell to open the debate. 7 minutes, please. Ms Mitchell, or thereby.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. It's a particular pleasure for me, on behalf of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association Scotland branch, to sponsor this Scottish parliamentary debate celebrating Commonwealth Week 2014. Since the CPA Scotland branch was established in May 2000, it has embraced the mission of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, and this has involved working enthusiastically with our friends across the Commonwealth, strengthening parliamentary democracy and promoting good governance. During the past 14 years, the Scottish Parliament have received hundreds of inward visits from parliamentarians and officials from legislators around the Commonwealth, who are all keen to share knowledge and experience and also to learn about the processes and procedures in this Parliament. As part of the CPA Scotland branch's contribution to Commonwealth Week, we are hosting the inaugural conference of the British Isles and Mediterranean region Commonwealth Women's Parliamentarians in the Scottish Parliament. This conference will explore the experiences of female parliamentarians and the representation of women in politics within the region. And I think probably Patricia Ferguson may speak more about that conference later. CPA Scotland branch has also sponsored 2 members of the Scottish Youth Parliament, Ailey Collins and David Stewart, to attend Commonwealth Day events which will take place in London. And both these MSYPs will take part in a Commonwealth debate organised by CPA headquarters. This year, of course, the Commonwealth Games coming to Glasgow, and the Games have inspired Scots from all walks of life to become involved in the event in numerous different ways. Thousands volunteered to help at the Games, including even members of CPA Scotland branch. The Commonwealth Games have provided Glasgow and the whole of Scotland with a unique opportunity to deliver lasting change in terms of physical activity, participation in sport, health and well-being, and this indeed is an important legacy. And for school children and our young people, there will be opportunities to learn about the Commonwealth, about values and about other countries and their cultures. Scotland has many historical links with other Commonwealth countries. There is hardly a family in Scotland with no ties to the millions of Scots diaspora throughout the Commonwealth. Scots immigrants worked as engineers, doctors, teachers and missionaries in many countries of the Commonwealth, and their contribution helped to develop and shape those countries in the past 200 and 300 years. Agnes MacPhail was the first woman to sit in the Canadian House of Commons. Sir John Macdonald was the first Prime Minister of Canada and was central to bringing about the Confederation of Canada in 1864. Lachlan Macquarie is hailed as the founding father of Australia. Thomas Docherty, born in Falkirk, is considered the greatest Canadian by Canadians, and he was Premier of Saskatchewan, and also he developed the Canadian Medicare system. It is almost 10 years ago that CPA Scotland branch first began to explore the possibility of joining the people of Scotland in linking with Malawi. Scotland's links with Malawi are well documented, and CPA Scotland branch has sustained and developed those links by establishing, for example, an interns programme for officials from the National Assembly of Malawi, and by completing 2 technical assistance programmes with the National Assembly, designed to strengthen parliamentary democracy. Yes, certainly.
Maureen Watt.
I thank the member for giving way. Does she agree with me that it's important that we maintain these links with Malawi, and that it's better for us as a country and a parliament to concentrate with a particular effort, great effort, in a few countries rather than spreading it more widely?
Margaret Mitchell.
I think it's important that we continue with Malawi, but also look at the Commonwealth as a whole, because the Scotland branch is in a position to be a force for good and to encourage good practice and governance throughout the Commonwealth. So it's very much a balance. Perhaps, Presiding Officer, the best way to sum up and recognise how the Commonwealth has evolved and its continuing relevance today is to read the following message from the Queen as head of the Commonwealth. In July this year, the opening of the 20th Commonwealth Games will be marked by the arrival in Glasgow of the baton that started its journey from Buckingham Palace 5 months ago. Many of us, following closely the news of the baton relay as it passed through the 70 countries and territories whose teams will gather for the Games, have looked at the images being brought vividly to life and what it means to be part of the Commonwealth family. It's wonderful to see the warmth, shared endeavour and goodwill as the baton is passed through the hands of many thousands of people. Affinities of history and inheritance from the past are strong, yet we are bound together by a sense that the Commonwealth is a powerful influence for good for the future. People of all ages, from different cultures, are weaving an ever-growing network of links which connect us in our diversity and our common purpose. It is this unity that is expressed in this year's theme, Team Commonwealth. While national teams will be concentrating on the competition in August, Team Commonwealth will have a longer focus, working together to achieve more enduring success. Experience of life differ widely throughout the Commonwealth, and we each make contributions from sometimes very different viewpoints. But we are committed to the same goals. Together we offer each other encouragement and draw strength from this mutual support. The understanding that we belong together and are able through teamwork to achieve far more than we could do alone has always been at the heart of our approach. For all of us, this is now captured in the Commonwealth Charter, which sets out the values and principles which guide and motivate us. This year, more children and young people are participating in the Commonwealth Day celebrations. Advances in technology enable us to reach a greater number of young people in schools, online, using Commonwealth Class Initiative, and through events in local communities where the Commonwealth flag is being raised. I am delighted that this is the year of Team Commonwealth. We will be working to build a brighter, united future in which every one of us can play a part and share in its rewards.
Many thanks. Now I call on Sandra White to be followed by Patricia Ferguson.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer, and thank Margaret Mitchell for her contribution. Aptly in the year that Scotland plays host to the Glasgow Commonwealth Games, the theme of this year's Commonwealth Week is, as Margaret has already said, Team Commonwealth. And I just hope that when we welcome competitors and visitors from across the Commonwealth and beyond, that the sun is shining as brightly then as it has been today and hopefully the rest of the week. The year will also celebrate friendship and motivation towards the shared goals and values that exist across the members, and reading the impassioned speech by Malala Yousafzai on Monday, I was reminded of how much work we still have to do to achieve the goals and to promote values such as equality. As many of us here will remember, Malala, from the age of 11, spoke openly of her views on promoting education for girls, invoking the fury of those who opposed her goals. Despite this, she stood by her beliefs and, as a result, suffered horrific consequences. On the morning of Tuesday, the 9th of October 2012, masked gunmen boarded her school bus as she was travelling to school, asked for her by name and then shot her in the head. Remarkably and thankfully, she survived this horrendous ordeal, going on to become a global campaigner for equality in education for girls. Nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, the youngest ever and the first girl, she's become a hugely influential figure, advocating girls' rights both in Pakistan and across the globe. And on Monday in her speech, she said, "In many parts of the world, including within the Commonwealth, access to education is denied to children, and girls are the most affected. We need to invest more in education to build up a bright future and protect children suffering from terrorism, child labour, child trafficking and gender abuse such as female genital mutilation." She reminded us that the future success of the Commonwealth depends on the next generation, but for me she reminded me of so much more. She reminded me what we can achieve if we have the courage to follow our convictions, regardless of the obstacles put in our way. And she also reminded me of the inspiration people like Malawi can provide for others striving to achieve their goals. Now, as has been said previously, this weekend the Scottish Parliament will have the honour of hosting the British Islands and Mediterranean Regional Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians Inaugural Conference. And I believe it will be a great opportunity to work towards the ideals underpinning Team Commonwealth. From this angle, we will all go away with actions of how we can make a difference in each of our countries, and this clearly demonstrates the enduring strengths of the Commonwealth of working together, but in doing so effectively, really changing the world from the ground. For this is what I believe Commonwealth Week means. Not only is it about gaining an understanding of our differences, the ideals which bind us, and the aspirations which drive us, but ultimately it's also about what we can take away from each other, which will make a practical and tangible difference to people, be they girls, boys, women or men. Of course, each country must take away what they believe is best for their country, what ideals and values best represent them. And this is, to my mind, another strength of the Commonwealth. For whilst we may all be different and have different views of how to take our country forward, we share certain universal values that together we help to promote. We gain strength from our diversity, and we respect and support one another in the choices that make benefits for our countries, we believe will make benefits for our countries. And should Scotland become an independent country, we will continue to share these values, and will continue to work together with our Commonwealth partners in the UK and beyond with the respect and understanding we hope we would receive from them. As this year's theme says, it's time to celebrate friendship and shared values. It's in everyone's interest to work together to promote those shared values rather than to seek to promote differences. In conclusion, Presiding Officer, whilst I've taken the opportunity to highlight Malawi's words and sentiments in my contribution today, it's also important to remember that inequality and lack of opportunity in the Commonwealth and beyond recognises no gender, race or location, and it's something we all must continually strive to eliminate. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you. Now call on Patricia Ferguson to be followed by Tavish Scott.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and may I congratulate Margaret Mitchell for securing this evening's debate and for allowing the Parliament to mark and to celebrate Commonwealth Week. And in opening, Presiding Officer, I would also want to thank the staff of the UKIRO office in the Parliament for all their hard work throughout the year in supporting the CPA branch executive and for keeping us, its members, on the right track. And I'd also like to thank them on behalf of all the members of the Parliament for organising travel and arrangements in the efficient, helpful and professional way that we've come to expect and now, I'm afraid, sometimes take for granted. The year ahead, as we've heard, Presiding Officer, is an exciting one for all Commonwealth citizens, but particularly for those of us in Scotland as we prepare for the 20th Commonwealth Games. For Glaswegians, it affords a unique opportunity to welcome our friends from around the world to the 20th Games, which begin in just 133 days' time. I believe that Glasgow will demonstrate its support and belief in the Commonwealth in a very tangible way during the Games, and as a Clydesider, a volunteer at the Games, I hope to do my bit to make our visitors' experience a good one. And if 133 days seems to be a little bit far off, we have, as we've heard, an opportunity in just 2 days' time to work with women colleagues from the British Islands and Mediterranean region as we come together in our first ever conference. We hope to discuss issues about the representation of women and the challenges and opportunities women have in politics, and to look too at the experience women have both in using new media and of being the focus of media attention ourselves. And I'm sure that the extraordinary way in which Julia Gillard was treated by the media and by fellow politicians will be an example we will be mindful of. One of our guests at the conference this weekend is the Honourable Lindiwe Maseko, the Speaker of Gauteng Province in South Africa. And it will be particularly interesting to hear from her about the way in which equality and human rights are enshrined in the South African Constitution and what that means in practice for individual South Africans in their everyday lives. The adoption of the Commonwealth Charter is an important staging post for all of us, setting out, as it does, very clearly the values and aspirations which should unite the Commonwealth: democracy, human rights and the rule of law. And it also recognises the commitment to the development of free and democratic societies, the promotion of peace and prosperity to improve the lives of all peoples of the Commonwealth family. Now, in any family, presiding officer, there will be disagreements and different ways of approaching issues. But an honest approach should be welcomed. And that's why I believe it's important that we tell our brothers and sisters in Uganda and Nigeria and in other Commonwealth nations that their legislation on homosexuality is abhorrent to us. But that isn't enough, because we must demonstrate by example and experience that diversity can enhance communities and make them more dynamic. After all, if someone is prevented from being who they really are, how can they fully contribute to society? But if we are to criticise our friends, we must also be willing to look at our own actions. And in this case, we have to consider whether we in the UK have the right policies in place to support asylum seekers who flee their own country because they fear prosecution or persecution as a result of their sexuality. I've heard some extremely worrying stories of people being subjected to degrading questioning by border officials, and this must not be allowed to continue. Presiding officer, the Commonwealth Charter is a strong and powerful document. But we must, across the Commonwealth, begin to talk about how we can realise its values rather than simply aspire to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now Colin Tavish-Scott, after which we'll move to the closing speech from the Minister.
Thank you very much, Deputy Presiding Officer. Can I also thank Margaret Mitchell for bringing this debate to Parliament, and in particular her remarks about the context of the CPA branch's work and the work that continues around that whole agenda, and notably Patricia Ferguson's remarks, not just in terms of the IRO staff and what they do to support Parliament in our work, but also her latter remarks about gay rights in some African states. It's always struck me about being a part of our CPA branch and about being part of our Parliament that one of the more challenging aspects of that work is when we meet colleagues from different parliaments where some of the principles and themes that Patricia Ferguson rightly mentioned in the Commonwealth Charter are talked about, but my gosh, they are not observed. And it is one of the harder pitches that we all make in life that we address that in a very frank way with colleagues in those international settings. And I know Patricia Ferguson is doing that work through the part of the CPA family that she's very heavily now involved in. I just wanted to make a couple of remarks about Sandra White's observations about young people and about the role they'll play in this year of all years. On Monday, the Commonwealth flag flew over the town hall in Lerwick, or it was indeed pulled up the flagpole. No doubt it was across many flagpoles, including, I think I saw it on the TV that night in Glasgow as well. But the other thing that happened on Monday, which is just as important as a flag being pulled up a pole, was at Baltersound Junior High School in Unst, which is the most northerly part of the UK, took part in the Commonwealth Class World Biggest Assembly, which took place right across the Commonwealth. That's a collaboration between the BBC, the British Council and the Commonwealth Secretariat to bring together schools and young people right across the globe. And they started their school day, as they did across time zones across the world, rather, looking at what brings us together, celebrating the values and connections of the Commonwealth's diverse global family. I live in a part of the world which is always very outward-looking. It's one of the joys about Shetland as a community. But it is important that we keep those values moving through the next generation. And if something very strong comes out of the Commonwealth Games, I suspect it will not be who wins gold medals and who doesn't, but it's rather that the next generation do reflect and are aware of the big wide world that is out there and what they can do in global terms to help people less fortunate than they. So we too will have the baton relay, the Commonwealth Baton Relay in July. We too will have Commonwealth Day in Shetland schools, opened by youth ambassadors. One of the best parts, I think, of the programme that's taken place around the Commonwealth and around the Commonwealth Games is the youth ambassador work that's going on and the youth legacy ambassadors that's going on right across Scotland. It's certainly very positive in Shetland. A number of them were down this weekend taking part in some workshops and other events that took place in Glasgow just over the last few days. And that, I understand, was a very useful experience for all, and more of that is to come. And in terms of the games itself, Shetland's second team, I understand that all local authorities will have second teams to support. We've been given Jersey and Brunei. Brunei a slightly long distance away. We're pretty familiar with Jersey. We beat them in the Island Games football on a regular basis, so we're very happy supporting them. But Brunei we know less about, although we're about to export Shetland ponies, I understand, to Brunei, knitted or otherwise. So many good connections will come out of that as well. But I think it's an admirable approach to the Commonwealth Games that different parts of Scotland will lead out these teams as they take part in the opening ceremony, and there will be some very excited youngsters who take place in that. The final point I wanted to make was simply about a sports conference that's taking place in Shetland in April. That again is bringing all these partners together around the Commonwealth Games. It's a very positive and inspiring message for young people that brings sport, the Commonwealth together in a way which can be only good for the long-term future, not just of my part of Scotland, but of the whole Commonwealth.
Thanks. And we now move to closing speech from Minister Shona Robertson, please.
Thanks very much, Deputy Presiding Officer. Can I first of all thank Margaret Mitchell for bringing this very timely debate to Parliament, and of course for the ongoing work of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and all of the people who make it happen. There's been a lot happening on Commonwealth Day and Commonwealth Week. Last night I had the pleasure of representing the Scottish Government at the Royal Commonwealth Association dinner, and today I had the great pleasure of being at Hampden to see Hampden unveiled as the new athletic stadium, and it is absolutely amazing. So if you get a chance, go and have a look. The theme of this year's Commonwealth Week is Team Commonwealth, very apt theme as we build towards the Games this summer. The whole of Scotland is of course looking forward to 11 fantastic days of sport. And as well as the excitement of the sport, there will be the opportunity to strengthen our economic, education and cultural ties with our friends from the nations and territories of the Commonwealth. Since winning the bid to host the Games back in 2007, we and our Games partners have been working tirelessly to stage our world-class Games that the Commonwealth will be proud of, and of course, importantly, to encourage others to bid to host the Games, because we want to see the Games perhaps go to parts of the Commonwealth that they've not been to as yet. And of course, we are ready with 133 days to go. I'm delighted that preparations are on time, on track and on budget. We're very proud to host the Games, and we are, of course, an enthusiastic participant in the Commonwealth. The Games absolutely bring people together across many different cultures and traditions. We want these Games to be a celebration of the unique power of sport, which can bring people together from all corners of the Commonwealth. The Queen's Baton Relay has already visited 45 out of the 70 Commonwealth nations and territories, and will of course tour around Scotland for 40 days immediately before the Games. And again, I think the Baton's journey has demonstrated the positivity that the Games can bring. So many different events happening within communities across the Commonwealth, and it's been great to see Mark Beaumont capturing some of these moments as he travelled with the Baton. It's certainly been touched and held by tens of thousands of children and young people across the Commonwealth, and that's quite a special thing in itself. It's currently enjoying the sunshine in Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, we're enjoying the sunshine as well, which I'm sure will continue right the way through to July. I want to say something about legacy from the Games. Of course, the Games will be quite rightly athlete-centred, but without a doubt, the Games will also be a powerful catalyst for economic growth, for education and for inspiring our young people. We are absolutely determined to leave a legacy behind that will continue for many years to come. We already have seen some of the economic benefits, the construction and refurbishment of venues, the support of jobs, the 60 million contribution to Scotland's economic growth over the last few years. Around 30,000 jobs have been supported, and Scottish companies have benefited from those Games contracts. And of course, the Commonwealth is hugely important for Scotland's economy, and we start from a position of relative strength. Exports to the Commonwealth, excluding the UK, stand at £1.8 billion. So there's a big market there, which is why, of course, we'll be hosting the Commonwealth Games Business Conference, which takes place in Glasgow on the eve of the Games, and will build on the Commonwealth Business Forum held this week. And it will focus on new opportunities for collaboration between governments and business across the Commonwealth itself. Now, of course, Scotland has a long tradition as a nation interested in people beyond our shores, and we want the legacy of Glasgow to extend across the Commonwealth. Members have made mention of some of the fantastic programmes. Tavish Scott quite rightly highlighted the Youth Legacy Ambassador programme, something that is a real success. We have our official education programme, Game On Scotland, which is encouraging children and young people to think beyond Scotland and see Scotland's place in the world and the difference in cultures and traditions across the Commonwealth, and to make those links and hopefully long-lasting relationships and friendships across the Commonwealth. We're investing in the 3350 Commonwealth Youth Leadership Programme, which will see 100 18 to 25-year-olds come together to learn from each other and to develop the skills and experience they need to lead change in their own countries. And as Patricia Ferguson and Tavish Scott and others hinted or pointed towards, the Games will also be a platform to showcase all that is good about the values of the Commonwealth Games. Humanity, equality and destiny are universal and cherished here in Scotland and across the Commonwealth. The Scottish Government expects all participation nations to reflect on these essential values as they prepare to compete in Glasgow. No one from any part of the Commonwealth who visits Scotland will be under any doubt about our values as a welcoming, open and tolerant society. And in that respect, the Games will be a force for good. And we're looking at ways of leaving a legacy around the human rights agenda that's not just about the Games being in Glasgow, but something perhaps that we can pass on to future hosts to try to change attitudes, to reduce prejudice, discrimination and injustice where it exists anywhere in the Commonwealth. And I thought Sandra White's mention of Malala as a role model of a young person facing up to discrimination is one that is very, very powerful and inspiring indeed. And if we can play our part when we host the Games to look a bit wider than just sport and to try to leave a legacy that can be of benefit to those across the Commonwealth who don't have the equality and rights that sometimes we perhaps take for granted here. And if we can nudge things a little bit further along the road on their journey towards better equality and human rights, then we will have done something very important indeed. So look forward to the Games coming, and of course everybody's participation in the Games one way or another. Thank you very much.
Many thanks. And thank you all. I now close this meeting of Parliament.